The landscape opens up before us like a book. What we see are rocks, steppe and oak forests, but what lies hidden in the history of this unique land? Geological processes have shaped this landscape over millions of years, like hundreds of pages of a book arranged in chronological order, and many pages are missing. And in the most recent couple of lines, we, humans, make their appearance. We've become part of the story. But let's turn back the pages of our book 500 million years. The sea that once washed over the land here was full of life. Paleontologists have described 2,000 different species of animals living here. Their calcareous shells were deposited on the seabed and formed massive layers. It was a process that took millions of years. Eventually, the sea receded and huge forces from within the earth began to turn, bend and break these blocks of limestone. What we see on the surface today was once the bottom of a primordial sea. New forces then began their work on the transformation of the landscape, in particular, water. The Beronka River dug its way into the stone massif and created the largest limestone canyon in the country. Water dissolves limestone. It seeps into the cracks, gradually eroding them and washing them out from the inside. This is how karst is formed. The riverbed deepened, floods raised the river level, and water penetrated further into the layers of limestone. It shaped them inside and out, leaving behind a labyrinth of 700 caves, the Bohemian Karst. The Konieprusi caves are the longest known cave system in the Czech lands. Their formation began many millions of years ago. However, even today, slowly, step by step, water continues to shape them. One of the unique features of these caves are the so-called Konieprusi rosettes. At more than 1.5 million years old, they are some of the oldest cave decorations in the Bohemian Karst. Some of them are made not only of calcite, but also contain clear or milk-coloured opal. But we can only see this gem, unique to the whole world, under ultraviolet light. Water from deep underground reaches the surface. Even the harshest of frosts never completely stops its rise. The calcium carbonate that's dissolved in the water precipitates in contact with the air, creating cascades of travertine. White winters are increasingly rare in the Bohemian Karst, and while, at least briefly, they offer an unusual view of the landscape much appreciated by us humans, other local inhabitants are less pleased at the arrival of the freezing weather. They spend most of the day foraging for food, the supply of which is now much reduced. For this pair of blackbirds, hawthorn berries are an important source of energy for surviving the frost-bitten days. Creatures that feed exclusively on insects and which stay here throughout the winter months have no other choice but to sleep through. Bats retreat to places with a constant above-zero temperature, like abandoned tunnels. For the past 50 years, conservationists have been counting the bat colonies and comparing the results. We know that around 3,000 bats spend the winter in the Bohemian Karst each year. During hibernation, the bats' metabolisms slow down considerably. Body temperature drops to 6 degrees, and their hearts beat only a few times a minute. Finally, winter is gone at last. Among the first plants to light up the pre-spring landscape are dogwood bushes. While bright yellow clusters of basket of gold set the rocks ablaze with their blossom. Pasks bow their petals to protect their pollen from early spring frosts and moisture. The Latin name of the spring pheasant eye, Adonis vernalis, reminds us of a character from Greek mythology. Adonis spent part of the year in the underworld, only to reappear in the light each spring. The forest herbs must bloom while the sunlight is still shining into the forest. Soon the treetops will turn green and there'll be much less light. The forest is now full of wood anemones and kidney worts. After a few weeks, they'll disappear again for another year. The tubers of the holly root have survived the winter, and their fragrant flowers have flooded the illuminated forests. It only takes a few weeks for the leaves of the lime and beech trees to fully develop. You probably wouldn't have noticed this wryneck. Its colouring blends in perfectly with the bark of the trees. Now, in April, the time of courtship, his typical call will give him away. But this bird cannot be overlooked. Its voice and plumage are so distinctive, it's impossible to mistake it for any other. A pair of hoopoes returned from Africa a week ago. The sparse forests and pastures suit them perfectly. They find nesting places and their favourite food, large insects. A male is trying to attract a female to a hole he's discovered in an old cherry tree. But she will have the final say on the choice of a new home. The size of the hole is crucial for the future mistress of the house. It must be just right, neither too small nor too big, so that a martin, for example, can't squeeze into the nest. Isn't this one just too narrow? The male seems to be losing patience, but in the end, it's fine. The female will now spend most of her time sitting on her eggs and letting the male feed her. She can't turn down a juicy cricket from her darling. Downy oak is a typical species of tree native to the Bohemian Karst. A wide range of plants thrive in its sparse, sunny vegetation. Ample sunlight is highly suitable for the St. Bernard's lily or various orchids, such as the lady orchid. The pyramidal orchid is not found anywhere else in this land. The beautiful flowers attract insects, but it's a trap. They won't find any nectar here. But while looking for it, insects inadvertently pollinate the orchids. A gentle breeze spreads the intoxicating scent of burning bush flower. The plant is saturated with aromatic essential oils that evaporate into the surroundings in the hot afternoon. The male stag beetle is seeking out the female. He can pick up her scent from dozens of meters away. The mate he's been seeking for so long is nearby. The lifetime of an adult stag beetle is short, only a few weeks in the summer. They don't easily colonize new places, which is one of the reasons why they are so rare and are only found in isolated locations like the oak forests of the Bohemian Karst. By May, the Vanovitsa rocks above the Baronka River are decorated with dozens of species of flowering plants. These little hoary rock rose bushes are the most striking ones. The delicate white blossoms of the Irish saxifrage thrive on the cool north-facing Tettine rocks because it prefers the cold and wet. When a species is critically endangered, conservationists keep a close eye on each individual. This is especially true for plants. The Austrian dragonhead grows in only 9 locations in this country, and they're all right here in the Bohemian Karst. This beautiful plant is close to extinction. Botanists know the location of every plant. They're marked with metal tags, and scientists use metal detectors to check them every year to see how they're faring. The largest quarry in the Bohemian Karst is called the Devil's Staircase. It's home to deposits of some of the purest limestone in the world. A large active quarry creates a scar on the landscape. But once mining stops, nature will reclaim sites such as these. Today, the abandoned quarries are much admired for their romantic beauty. And thanks to earlier mining methods, some look like original natural rocks. After 60 years of rest, the Great America Quarry has been transformed into a scene from a western. The former quarries also provide shelter for many plants and animals that would otherwise have disappeared from the landscape. For the Eurasian eagle owl, the quarry walls are no different from natural rocks. The bird's young are safe on its inaccessible ledges. What seems at first glance to be rock is actually hardened limestone rubble, taken away years ago and dumped in the abandoned quarry. The common sand martin, a relative of the swallow and the house martin, has been digging burrows in steep river banks since time immemorial. But there are very few natural river banks left, so they have to make do with limestone banks. Orchards have contributed to the charm of the Czech landscape for centuries. They create a smooth transition between the village and the surrounding countryside and contribute to its biodiversity. Meadows and copses also bring life to a monotonous agricultural landscape. They offer shelter, a source of food, and a place for nesting. Red-backed shrikes find not only insects here, but also dense, thorny bushes in which they hide their nests. The rare barred warbler has also made it its home. The warm, sunny limestone slopes of the Bohemian Karst look deserted at first glance, but a closer look reveals that these rocky steppes are teeming with life. They're among the most species-rich places in our countryside. European feathergrass, popularly known as St. Ivan's beard, is a species of grass with narrow, delicate leaves. In the Bohemian Karst, it grows on rocks and rock steps, sometimes forming continuous patches of growth. Its long, feathery awns help the ripe seeds to travel downwind. When the grain hits the ground, the long pointed awn begins to rotate and penetrates the soil like a corkscrew. You can see how the whole extraordinary mechanism works in this time-lapse footage. Grazing shaped the appearance of the Czech landscape for centuries. It brought many benefits to us humans and at the same time prevented the growth of trees and shrubs. In many places, grazing helped to preserve valuable areas of steppe that are gradually disappearing. Then, however, people and their animals left the landscape. It began to change rapidly and to become overgrown. In some places, grazing has resumed. The results are soon visible. The overgrowth of the landscape has stopped, and rare insect species have returned. The predatory owl fly, a relative of the better-known antlion, is now a critically endangered species. It suffered from the end of grazing in what were formerly its steppe habitat. It can only be found in southern Moravia and here in central Bohemia. This beetle is a long-legged pill turner. It's only seen in pastures. It creates balls from the droppings of herbivores in which the female lays her eggs. The ball is then rolled to a suitable place where it's buried in the soil and the larvae develop inside it. Thanks to open areas and pastures with lots of flowering plants, butterflies thrive in the Bohemian Karst. There are nearly 3,000 species living here. In many other parts of the Czech Republic, butterflies have almost completely disappeared. One of the local jewels is the inconspicuous grayling. Formerly common everywhere, now one of the last large populations is surviving here. Among the clumps of grass in the pasture, the hermit butterfly is hatching. After emerging from their chrysalis, the butterflies must hang on to the nearest blades of grass as quickly as possible. Their wings need space to fully develop. Hermit butterflies are also very sensitive to changes in the landscape. With the loss of their steppe habitat, they've become extinct almost nationwide. Conservationists are now trying to rebuild their populations by introducing butterflies from rescue breeding programs. The European ground squirrel also needs an open landscape to thrive. This steppe animal came to us with the first farmers. Ground squirrels were still abundant here in the middle of the last century. But then the grazed meadows began to disappear, and with them the European ground squirrel. There's just one small colony left in the Bohemian Karst on a single meadow. We've flipped through just a few pages of this book about the Bohemian Karst, but the story does not end here. Even with minor human interventions, the landscape is changing. How we take care of it and what will be written in the next chapters of the book is very much up to us.